Welcome back to the Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne and this channel is all about bringing you news and content surrounding childhood sexual abuse. I am myself somebody who's a survivor. I went through sexual abuse from the age of 9 to 13 years old. I consider myself more than a survivor. I'm somebody that has overcome many challenges successfully in the aftermath, but it is a term given to those that have lived through childhood trauma of sexual abuse who are basically here to tell the tale. And on this channel, I share my experiences, things that I discovered along my own journey, and I also share news stories from around the world to give voice to other survivors' journeys as well. And you know, it's a powerful thing to be able to do that. And there's not many channels out here that are doing this in this way. So I want to be somebody that is part of a positive process for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. If you haven't checked out my other videos, feel free to do so. If you like any of the content on my channels, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so that you can be notified of any new uploads. I appreciate the support. So I just wanted to come back today and talk about the Oprah Winfrey interview that she did with James and Wade. And I know this was something that was aired originally in America after the two parts of the documentary. I managed to watch it a couple of days ago. I did have a little bit of a break after I watched the Leaving Neverland documentaries. I felt a little bit drained, but I did go back and watch the interview. And I know there is also a lot of controversy surrounding it because of Oprah, and I've seen lots of things about, you know, Oprah not interviewing Harvey Weinstein and Oprah, you know, selling out black people and everything else. But I wasn't watching it from any of that point of view. I was never really an Oprah fan. I was never into Oprah like that. You know, I don't really hold people on a high pedestal. I never really watched any of her talk shows. So I just watched this documentary to see, you know, what James and Wade was saying. So one of the things that I found really empowering was the fact that the studio audience was made up of 100 survivors, their friends and supporters. I thought that was so empowering. I really think that if we had communities and places like this around the world where survivors could come together and have an open and honest dialogue about sexual abuse and what it's meant for different people, so many survivors would find this healing. So right from the beginning, you know, Oprah opens up with the director on the stage and also James and Wade. And what I did like about the interview was that Oprah wasn't afraid to ask the hard questions. The questions that a lot of Michael Jackson fans and different people have, you know, things about, you know, why they didn't speak up sooner. Did they know it was abuse? Why, in Wade's case, why did he still want to work for Michael Jackson? And he answered those questions, I thought, in a really honest and open way. I like the way that Oprah had set out the interview. She talked about child sexual abuse and how she has a struggle with the terminology just because as a child, if you've gone through sexual abuse, you don't realize it as abuse. She called it seduction rather than abuse. And you know, I thought that was a really important point to make just because I am myself somebody that went through it as a child, and as many children do, they don't realize until they grow up that what has happened to them through maybe a triggering event, that what has happened to them as a child was sexual abuse. It's a terminology that adult survivors use now. As a child, you don't know it is abuse just because the person who's doing it to you, as statistics have shown, is 90% of child sexual abuse cases is by someone the child knows, loves and trusts. And with the grooming process and the way that it is introduced to the child who becomes a victim of sexual abuse, it is done in a very grooming way. It is not brutally done at first. So she was talking about having a struggle with the word child sexual abuse, but she called it seduction and grooming, and I think that was fair terminology to use. What Oprah said to the director Dan Reed is that in airing, she's aired over 2,000 shows and 217 of them was on child sexual abuse, and she said that his documentary that he did managed to capture what she was trying to say about sexual abuse in the airing of that documentary that she had been trying to do in over 217 shows. Now, some people are quite cynical about the reasons why Oprah is doing this. I don't blame them in a sense, because obviously she is a top media person. She has been for many years. But, you know, people are saying, you know, it was for ratings and everything else. That's why the documentary was done by HBO. But the documentary wasn't actually done by HBO. It was a documentary done by Dan Reed, who took it to the Sundance Film Festival. And then it was acquired and bought by HBO. So people are very cynical about the motives behind the documentary and about Oprah's involvement in this. But I think that I'll be give her the benefit of the doubt just because she herself has said that she was sexually abused as a child. And the questioning and everything that she did within this interview does suggest that she's somebody that knows about this subject. Oprah was asking Wade different questions and James different questions about when they realised it was sexual abuse, asked them about the court cases, when they came forward both times, why did they not say anything then? And to listen to their reasoning and everything behind it, I still believe that they both went through sexual abuse at the hands of Michael. It was very evident and clear in different ways that both men, Wade and James, are on different parts of their healing journey. Wade, you could see that he's still affected by it, but he was able to give more, I felt, more kind of thoughtful answers. But James, to me, just looked like a really broken man, and almost in the interview as well, he looked quite uncomfortable with hearing the information, you know. And I hope that he's actually getting the support he needs, both of them actually getting the support they need at this difficult time, especially being on a world stage with so much scrutiny. I covered some stuff in my Leaving Neverland documentary review from a survivor's perspective, but again, it was really interesting to hear Wade describe and use terminology to do with Michael, that he was a god to him, that what he said was gospel, and that, you know, he seemed like almost like an alien to him because he was so powerful. It was just amazing to me that, again, you know, he was allowed to have this man as a god. Both of them in their own different ways viewed him as this, but it is down to the parents that that was allowed to happen. Wade's mum in particular, when was offered the chance by Dan Reed to watch a screening of the documentary, chose for the director to skip past the parts where Wade and James talked about their experiences. And that was really interesting to hear. You can see clearly from both men, they're struggling with their relationships with their mothers. We have Wade's mother's denial still after all these years of not wanting to face anything to do with it. And then you have James's mother, who James has an issue with for allowing him to be in such a vulnerable position. Their relationships with their mothers are not great, and it's going to take a lot of therapy and support for that to heal, if that can ever heal. James talked about, on seeing Wade give his story, he said he felt a sense of panic that he had been found out, and it's something that he talked about in when he had to give evidence and, you know, all the different things to do with the trials, that he was more focused on. It wasn't about him whether he was telling lies or not telling lies. It was more about being found out. And that's something I can relate to, because when I was 13 years old, I was now 5 years into the sexual abuse. Childline, which is a charity over here in the UK, came to my school and were going around the schools in 1989 talking to students about what sexual abuse is. And by that point, I never had a name for what was going on with me. I didn't even know what I was going through with sexual abuse. But in that moment, in that class, where the woman told me through everything that she shared about what sexual abuse is, I finally had a name for what was going on with me. And I describe in my book, Daughter Arise, about almost feeling that I'd been caught, looking around and feeling that people knew it was me. It is a very, very real feeling that a lot of survivors go through. I went through it myself. So it was interesting to hear James share that. More, it was about him feeling like he'd been caught, even though he saw this person on TV talking about their experience. They weren't even in the same room as him, he didn't even know him, but he felt like he had been caught. And that had something to do with the grooming process as well. I thought it was very brave that the survivors came along to that screening and actually allowed their faces to be shown. I really feel kind of really discouraged when I see it, in a sense, just because over here in the UK, there really isn't any big platforms like that. And it just shows, because it doesn't matter what people say, the fact that they are given a very open platform on TV to be able to have this platform for survivors to come together, to talk and to be able to feel empowered by that community is an amazing, amazing thing. I did think it was a very positive interview for survivors. I liked the discussion and all the questions that was asked. I liked the fact that they included an expert on child sexual abuse who explained the grooming process. They had a man in the audience who was sexually abused 33 years ago by a police sergeant in his neighbourhood, and he was talking about power power, and how that power of seeing him with the badge and the gun and his influence on the young people in the neighborhood, you know, really compounded his experience for him, why he never spoke out. It's something that I think a lot of survivors can relate to in terms of their experience, not speaking out at the time because of the person's power and influence. It doesn't have to be somebody like a superstar. It happens within family circles, in religious circles. It happens with pastors and priests and imams. It happens in families where they have a popular uncle, a family friend, somebody who is popular and well loved and known by the community or the family circle. There is always this fear of speaking out because of the fear of not being believed and the person's influence and control. And that's another thing that I feel is lost during the whole kind of opinion about this documentary, is that the documentary was really about two young men who were groomed and sexually abused by a perpetrator. And basically the perpetrator was Michael Jackson. And, you know, I felt that people were lost in the fact that it was Michael Jackson and not concentrating on the fact that it's a story of two men who were sexually abused by someone. What's been interesting just the last few days of seeing everything that's come out, it has been an interesting indicator of society's perceptions and attitudes to childhood sexual abuse. And if I'm being honest at this particular moment, it is going to take a lot for people to come forward, especially with the attitudes that have been displayed with people who don't have a lot of information or even no information about paedophiles or grooming or child sexual abuse. It has been actually a really difficult week to see how the attitudes of people and society in general have towards childhood sexual abuse survivors. But I just came away from the documentary feeling actually it was a positive thing that Oprah did. And I'm not going to get into the whole kind of conspiracies behind it. You know, people talking about, oh, you know, she doesn't question Harvey Weinstein. Did Harvey Weinstein sexually abuse children? Or was he sexually abusing women? Those are two different classes in itself. We're talking about underage children that have been sexually abused, and this is what the documentary and the interview was about the experiences of these two young men. I've done this video just to talk about my thoughts on the interview. I thought it was well put together. I just imagine, you know, a day where we could have empowering communities, forums, and this is something I talk about in my book Choose Life, creating environments where survivors could come together. It may not have to be on TV like that, but having forum events where survivors can come together, professionals, different people from different fields can come together and empower each other and to educate each other. I just think that would be such a wonderful thing. And in part, I'm going to be doing my own little part to that, and I will share that in another video, because I'm off to California in May to host an empowerment event over there for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I've done this over here in the UK, creating an environment where survivors can come together and be supported and encouraged by each other, and for people who know them to find out information and education and awareness around this subject. That was just my thoughts on the Oprah interview. I will leave a link to it in the description box below. I am going to be doing some videos shortly on the grooming process and what grooming is, and I think that's really important. And also I'm going to do a video as well about survivors of sexual abuse and how they can spot the signs of grooming, because as we saw with Wade's father, as I explained in the last video, he himself was a survivor of sexual abuse, and he felt powerless with everything that was going on with his son and Michael Jackson to intervene in the contact. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at www.daughterarise.org.uk or info@daughterarise.org.uk. If you have any questions for me, or if there's a particular topic actually that you would like to see me do a video on, please email me at that address. Check out my website, because I do blogs on sexual abuse and topics surrounding it, and feel free to check out my other videos as well. I will also leave links to my autobiography Daughter Arise in the description box below, and also my self-help awareness practical workbook for survivors, those that have been through sexual abuse that want to get information and do practical exercises to help them to find their voice. So until the next video, take care.